leaders are demanding, from the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff on down to the lowliest brigade combat team commander wants to have these things happen. We have the Geospatial Governing Board for the Army, but we have recognized that the Army is just a small entity in all of this, that there's really a coalition out there, not necessarily just a coalition of allies, but a coalition amongst our partners that are on the battlefield with us. And those today are everybody from State Department to, if you go into Haiti, it's the Department of Interior. It's a lot of folks who have a lot of skills, who have a lot of data, who have a lot of understanding. And so all of the CIOs in the federal government are starting to recognize this. The White House is starting to recognize this. So governance is something, it's a trend. We're going to see more of it, and it's going to be better. The next is really standards, and I know I heard what the panel said, and I agree somewhat. Standards, the way that we have defined it in the Army Geospatial community is we want to find that sweet spot of a minimum set of standards. What is the minimum set of standards to do what we have all wanted to do, and that is share our information and have it line up geometrically so that we can fuse it, and have it line up from a topology so that we can understand it and understand what we're looking at. So we have standards that we have to hit in architecture. I mean, there are issues with, if you want to talk SOAs, there are issues with what I call SOA minuses. That's folks that we have out on the battlefield that don't have a 3G network. We'll never have a 3G network, is my trend. Not because we can't, but because our enemy won't allow us to. So we have to architect our piece a little bit differently than those that are working strictly from an internet-based approach here in the U.S., where we have a 99.99999 whatever availability. Data models. It is important for us to understand that the semantics of the dictionary, the understanding of how we speak in the digital world is just as important as how we speak in English or Russian or Chinese in everyday business. So those data models, again, need to be worked, and they are being worked, and they're being brought together. We have a number of different communities who have had data models over the years, and we're working to bring all of those together in a federated sense. No longer can we afford to do an API-type translation between one and another and back and forth, and keep paying for all of those translations. So that's another key component of this, this standards as well as the governance, is to minimize all of those translations back and forth. Our transport layers, I mean, there's a great community of folks who have done cloud computing. I don't know that we called it that when we first started it, but moving data across the internet and doing it from data center to data center, and doing it, to those of us who use the internet, we're pretty blasé about it. If we're in India and we start looking things up and we get what we're looking for, there was actually a whole lot of back office stuff that went into provisioning that forward and to moving it there so that you got that quick reaction time. The back office itself, it comes to this issue of separation of data from your software and from your hardware. Data is independent, needs to be independent of those things, so that when the next technology comes along, you don't have to recreate your data. You don't have to reorganize your data. The data is data. And so it is key that your back office is built upon those standards. We have, in the military instances, we have a number of communities that really use geospatial data an awful lot. Our intel communities, our battle command communities, and our modeling and sim communities. All of these three are convergent. And so we're working to converge based upon those standards, those three communities as a whole. The standards, again, across the board, whether you're talking about federal, state, local, NGO, allies, or within a particular community of interest or discipline, these are things that need to establish standards, whether they be their tactics, techniques, and procedures, how you do your work, how you, I think we were talking about telephone poles, you know, how do you go to the imagery first, do you then send out a truck? Those kinds of things are all, you know, tactics, techniques, and procedures that are driven by both the technology and the availability of the data. So those are standards. The last one is really also the first one. It's this idea of a big enterprise. We're, you know, most abused word in Washington, D.C. today, other than well, actually, there are a bunch of abused words, but particularly you know, enterprise is one within the technology community that is abused. And what is that? You know, and I tend to think of it as a huge, huge matrix. It's all of us. We all have a part to play. We're all collectors. We're all sensors. We all see things new and differently and are able to contribute to the rest of the world and to each other in a sharing way, if we open up those sharing borders. So it's bigger than oneself. It's certainly larger than an organization. It's more than just your functional area, if you're a surveyor or if you're this or that. It is a disciplined sharing of data. And so, you know, we believe that this gets to that value proposition. The value proposition is that as you share data with each other, and you share data with your hires and folks that are your peers, what you have done is you have saved lives. You have made better decisions. By doing this in a disciplined way, you can save money. Our integrators, and I don't want to denigrate any of the integrators that I do see here, they make money off of us. They make money off of us because we are not together, because we don't have these issues. They're not bad people. They're trying to help us. We just need to help ourselves. So disciplined sharing will save money and it will save lives. There's no reason, and this became a revelation for my folks at the Army Geospatial Center. We were collecting loads and loads and loads of data from Afghanistan and Iraq, both street view like Google's as well as high-res imagery and elevation data. And so our data stores were just exploding along with human social culture, all sorts of data. So, you know, one of the points that I made to my folks is, why should we have the data? Why should we hold the data? Shouldn't that be somebody else? That's not our real expertise.